Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey, everybody. It's episode 32 of Screw the Commute podcast. Tom Antion here. Got a great guest that's going to tell you how not to be afraid of certain things. And I'm not even going to tell you what he's going to tell you to be afraid of. Now, if you missed episode 31, you made a mistake. That's where I did my little spiel on how you joint venture with guys like me, what to say, what not to say. I put a lot of people on the map. I'm not trying to solicit you to put you on the map, but if there's somebody that could put you on the map, you want to know what to say to them, what not to say, and how to do it. So I covered that in episode 31. Now our sponsor. Let me ask you something. Did you ever wonder how tens of thousands of people like me sit home, earn legitimate money, and don't have to listen to a boss or get up and fight traffic every day? Now, I just made up these figures, but in the time you've spent commuting to a job, you could have raised 3 families, become a professional figure skater, and walked the Appalachian Trail 7 times. So if you want to learn how guys like me have time to think up stupid statistics like I just made up, it's because we have online businesses. You'll learn how to have an online business or get a high-paying job at the only licensed, dedicated distance learning school in the country, probably the world, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. Check it out at imtcva.org, and we'll have that in the show notes. All right, let's get to the main event. John Drebinger is a certified speaking professional, has spoken to over 400 major clients on safety over 28 years. His best-selling books have sold 80,000 copies, which is 45,000 more copies than any other book in the field of safety. His new online course helps people eliminate their fear of speaking in public. John, are you ready to screw
the commute? There you go.
All right. Hey, John, thanks for being here. Tell everybody what you do.
Well, I've been for the past 28 years a motivational speaker in the field of safety, industrial safety, workplace safety. And I started out as a professional magician, and somebody had asked me to come to a safety meeting and use safety as the magic word. When I did that, I all of a sudden gave them more than they wanted. I used stuff I'd learned from trade shows and other fields, and I actually wrote routines that taught their concepts. And so once I did that, I started going all over the country, speaking to people and making it fun. And it wasn't a boring safety meeting because I am a professional magician.
Wow, I didn't know that. That takes a lot of practice to really do good stuff. There's a lot of easy stuff that every trainer uses, but to really do professional level stuff takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I did magic professionally full time for a period of about 9 years. After I worked for the Boy Scouts as an executive from 1976 to 82. And then my wife gave me the opportunity to go out and try magic as a full-time profession, and it took off like crazy. And then the speaking came from that. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's interesting. You said your wife gave you the permission?
Well,
how it works?
When our first child was born, she got a great offer from the company she was working with to come back. They really wanted her to come back. And so she said, okay, you stay home, take care of the kid, and I will, I'll go to the office every day, and you can get started doing that. And we set a 2-year goal that we'd match my salary that I used to work for with the Boy Scouts, and we hit it in 1 year. And then once I got into professional speaking, at one point when our son was born, she was able to quit work and stay at home here and enjoy our 2-acre parcel of land in California and do gardening. So she's had a great time with that.
Well, that's interesting, the way that you got out of your dreaded job, because a lot of people don't have a wife that's going to let them do it. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But do you remember that moment when time came that you're getting out of going to the job every day?
Oh, absolutely. And it was neat from the standpoint the time became totally mine. That I can decide what I do when I do it. And you mentioned in the introduction, family and so forth. One of the huge advantages I have is I now have two grandchildren that live about 20 minutes north of me, just south of Sacramento, California. And if all of a sudden something comes up and they've got something at school or a program at church that I can go see, I just drop everything and head out there. Or I can go and see a baseball game in the afternoon or a soccer game that they're playing in, and I don't have to ask anybody else, and I don't have to second guess that if we plan a trip. The other advantage, of course, I do a lot of flying. I don't commute to and from the job, but I do have the privilege of flying around the world, and I save up all my miles from that to take them. We'll be going to Disney World later this fall. It's a secret to them, so we won't let them listen to the podcast. But
Okay.
but I'll be able to fly. I've done this before, where we just fly the whole family, the two grandkids, my daughter and her husband, and my wife and I, and off we go and don't pay a dime. So
That is great. Now, you've been screwing the commute for a long, long time, but I'm sure you remember what it was like to go to work every day. And what would you tell people that are out there now thinking, wow, God, taking the kids there and there and doing all this stuff anytime I want? What would you tell them if they're thinking about making that transition?
well, it's a fabulous lifestyle. Of course, for some people, you think, well, that you don't have the security of a regular paycheck or a job where you're going to and from an office. But in any economy, there isn't any real security in any job anyway. I mean, you can,
That went out a long time ago.
yeah,
Really.
those days are gone. That's somewhere back in the 50s or 60s. But
Hmm.
the fact is that you control what you do. You can pick the things you enjoy doing. I mean, I've been in the safety field for years. I'm sure there are other fields where I could probably hit a higher income, but I absolutely love teaching. I teach communication skills to safety professionals, and I know they're better at what they do. I just got back from the American Society of Safety Professionals conference in San Antonio, and I had people stopping me on the street saying that when they got my book 10 years ago, it changed their life, that they literally changed their entire career in safety because of what I taught them. And so that's really profound when you realize you've had that kind of impact on people's lives.
That's really, really rewarding.
Yep.
Now, you have a course, we're going to talk about it more in depth, but you have a course on overcoming the fear of public speaking. But it seems like the work you're doing, and a lot of people say they feel like they're going to die up there.
Yes.
But the stuff you did in the communication field, in the safety field, they could die if communication isn't imparted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correctly.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And the biggest problem in the field of safety was everything was so boring that the audience wasn't listening.
Mhm.
I was at one presentation, I got done with my talk. There were 350 people there. I was taking notes frantically of the next person because it was early in my career. I was learning. And I went out to use the restroom, and half of the 350 people were in the hallway. And I said, guys, this is really good stuff. And they said, yeah, but we can't stay awake. And they were right. I mean, it was terrible.
That's true.
And so I know you do speaking, teaching people speaking, and it's not something people learn in school. It's not something that the courses cover. I mean, I was a speech major in college, and a lot of the techniques and things about speaking, they don't teach. They talk about theory, a lot of the concepts, but they don't get into a lot of the how-tos that make things effective.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say they were going to sleep because my system's called the Wake 'em Up system.
Oh, yeah.
And it's based on attention-gaining devices, one of which would be magic. There's all kinds of them. I was dealing with mostly professional speakers, so I didn't get in too much on overcoming the fear of speaking. But wow, people, they just start trembling, a lot of them, and sweating and get sick to their stomach over time. So you've got some help for them, right?
Right. Well, and there's one speaker I helped, actually, he was a professional. You would know him. He's given me permission to tell the story, not with his name, but he came to me several years ago, and he would never eat breakfast or lunch or dinner with the client before his presentation. And it was because he was always in the bathroom throwing up before he went to speak. And
There's been a lot of big name people. I mean, Johnny Carson and Laurence Olivier were deathly afraid of appearing in public, and they still did it.
absolutely.
You didn't know it.
Yeah, and they dealt with dealing with the fear, when I started researching, helping people overcome a fear of speaking, I found a huge number of the suggestions are how to deal with it, how to cope with it, instead of just outright eliminating it. And I had learned techniques that help people just blow it out of there, and they're not afraid of things. People tell you speak more often, which of course you and I know is outstanding to do as a speaker. The more you speak, the better you get. But if you're frightened of speaking, you're not going to look for opportunities to go out and speak. You're
Right.
You're too scared to do that, so you're not going to get better. So I deal with it and say, let's get rid of the fear first, then do all the stuff where you speak more often and get better and improve your skills, because now you're not miserable doing it, you're enjoying it.
So give them a couple tips here on what they can do if they are in that boat. They know they should increase their skills. It's going to help them in their job. It's going to help give them a chance to go out on their own faster. So what are some things they could do to start improving that?
Well, there are a huge number of things that, fear of speaking holds people back in their career, their social life. I've talked to people at church that there was one group trying to get more people in a Bible study. I said, the problem you have is you have people read from the Bible at your session, and half of these people are scared to death. Actually, 75% of people are afraid of speaking in public. They don't want to come to your class because they know you're going to say, hey, Bob, read such and such to us, and they're just shaking and nervous about it.
Right.
And so I've actually taught people to teach Bible studies, always, get permission before you have somebody read, and make the group know you'll never call on them impromptu, because you'll get people coming. But people are afraid of being, if they get nervous, and it builds on itself. They start feeling themselves shaking. They'll look down and actually see their hand shaking, which then makes them more nervous. They start breathing heavy, faster, and it builds. One of the things I teach people, and I shared it with the conference I was just speaking to, they had me do what they call a flash session. And I told a story about a past president of the American Society of Safety Professionals. And I was a good friend of his standing next to him when he was about to get up and give his speech accepting being the new president of the association to an audience of about 3,000. And he said, wow. I love this, but I hate speaking in front of people. And I said, well, what do you feel like when you do it? And he says, well, I'm all, I'm breathing fast, and I'm trembling a little bit, and my heart's racing, I'm sweating. And I said, that's interesting, because I had heard a story from one of my mentors who talked about two performers, and one of them, a female performer, who they asked her, what does it feel like right before you go on and speak or sing? And she said, oh, my heart's racing, I'm breathing fast, I'm perspiring, it's absolute sheer terror. And that's the meaning she gave it. And then they interviewed Bruce Springsteen, and they said to him, hey, what's it like for you when you go on right beforehand? And he says, oh, my heart's racing, I'm breathing fast, I'm just trembling with excitement. It's pure exhilaration. I love it. In fact, all I can think of is I'm hoping that clown that's up there right now gets off the stage, stop introducing me, get off the stage so I can do what I love doing. And it's both exact same physiological responses with a different meaning to it. The one person attributes it as excitement. The other person attributes it to fear. So one of the first things I do with people is we change the name of it. Instead of saying somebody's afraid of speaking, I say, how about if we deal with the fact that you have a discomfort speaking? Because that myth that's out there on the internet where people say people are more afraid of speaking in public than dying, isn't really true. That's bad research. I mean, because if I took somebody, put them in front of an audience of 2,000 people and had a gun and said, okay, get up there and speak or I'll shoot you, they're going to get up and give a speech. They'll be miserable, but they'll do it.
Right.
And a good friend of mine at Virginia Tech, a behavioral psychologist, he says, yeah, that's not a consequence that they're seeing happening right away. So they can think of speaking and go, oh my gosh, that could happen to my job tomorrow. So they're more afraid of that because it's more real to them.
Right. And so can you help them change their attitude?
Yeah, there's several different techniques. In the session I did just last week, I taught one session because we only had the 15 minutes. The course I do, it's an online course that's we've set up, and it's basically an hour and 5 minutes, taking them through a process of about 8 different steps. And when I've worked with people individually, I'll usually use 1, 2, or 3 different ones. The guy that I was talking to and told that story to and changing the meaning of his physiology just before he goes on, his fear went away there and has never come back. And
that's amazing.
It was just one technique, talking to him a certain way, that worked in that case. But when I work with a person individually, I'll do 2 or 3. In the case of the online course, we just use all 8 techniques that I've used with different people just to make sure we blow it away completely.
Mm-hmm. Now, has anything funny happened while you're doing this stuff?
I can tell you some funny things about my speaking and the magic. In doing the work with the fear of speaking, I guess to me the funniest thing is that people go from the state where they've been nervous and not enjoying something that I love, and I know you love, the opportunity to be in front of people and sharing with them how they can succeed and how their lives can be better. In my case, how they can get home safely without, their kids waiting for them one day when they don't come home. And I enjoy that. And it's fun. And so to me, it's always it seems funny that, wow, these people, this is hard for them, or they're suffering.
Right.
And they can go instantly from the one state of suffering and being in pain to, hey, enjoying it. And
that's awesome. Now, what about some stuff that's happened because you've done lots and lots of speeches?
Yeah. And using the presentations, I do magic in the presentation every time as I transition from being a magician. I'm a member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood, California, which is
yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Academy of Magical Arts, Hollywood Magic Castle. And, I've learned there, they have lectures every other weekend. When I first joined and I lived in Southern California, I'd go every other weekend and just sit and listen and learn. But one of the things I learned from one of the guys there was how to steal watches. And it's one of my signature effects. Whenever possible, I will take somebody's watch from the audience during my presentation. In safety, I use it as an illustration to talk about distractions. But one of the funny things, one of the most things that's fascinating to me about it is I've actually had people look at me take the watch off their wrist and put it in my pocket. And I'm a certified hypnotherapist also. And when I learned hypnosis, I learned why magic works. Unconsciously, they're seeing me put it in my pocket, but their conscious mind has no clue. Later on, they'll go like, oh, wait a minute. I remember that, but the watch is long since gone.
And I never believed this until a guy that was really good at it, I said, do it to me. And I knew he was going to do it, and he still did it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then I became a believer.
I've had people walk up to me and they'll say, John, I wanted you to take my watch. And I said, well, I can't do it because you're thinking of it right now. I said, let me do another trick for you. And then I go ahead and take their watch off.
Take his watch.
As soon as I tell them I can't do it, they relax. They don't think I'm going to, and then boom, it's gone. But I was working a restaurant one time, and this one lady, the people would come in, I would do magic at their tables while people are waiting. And so I do magic at this one table. I take this lady's watch, I put it in my pocket. And the way I would do is I'd finish my routine at the table and they'd say, hey, we want to thank you for coming to the restaurant tonight. I have a special gift for you from the management. How would you like this nice watch? And I held the watch up for the lady. And she's just stunned. And she looks at her friends and her family's with her at the table. And she looks at them and she says, you guys don't understand. That's a $600 watch. I don't understand how the restaurant can afford to give away a $600 watch because I have one just like it. Her husband starts nudging her. She looks down at her wrist and goes, oh my gosh, and was just incredibly shocked. So,
oh man, I love that.
Yeah. And of course, the other one I loved about that is being a magician when I was working in restaurants. And a lot of times there's people with different egos, and the purpose of magic is to entertain people, not to fool people. That's a side thing that goes along, but you really don't care about that. You want people to be entertained. And occasionally when I do magic at a bar, people would bring their friends in, and you'd get one of these guys with a big ego that, has to know how everything's done and everything else. And the trick I would be doing involved the little sponge balls that I'd make go from one place to another. That was my distraction. And this one guy, every time, it would happen every time. When the guy started telling everybody at the bar, I know what he's doing, and I've done it at parties and people's houses, they'll start announcing everybody, I know exactly what he's doing. He's taking two balls, squeezing them together, putting them in my other hand. Meanwhile, my hand's already taken his watch off. It's in my pocket. And so then I make a little ceremony. I go, ladies and gentlemen, let me get your attention. Since Bob here has figured out my trick, I always have a tradition of giving somebody that figures out the magic a present. And I said, Bob, since you figured it out, here's this nice watch, which, of course, he has no clue. The whole room falls apart, and it's fabulous. So,
I love that.
And there hasn't been a guy showing off like that I haven't already had his watch in my pocket when he starts telling everybody he knows how the trick's done. So
That's a great thing. Now, well, hey, John, what do you like best about working for yourself, and what's the worst part about it?
Well, the best part is the freedom to be able to do what I want when I want to do it, and be able to, if something comes up, I can do that. I do enjoy working a lot. I think an important thing in life is having a purpose in what you do. You know, sadly, we've lost a lot of people recently in the news that have ended their life. And I think part of it is because they don't have a purpose in what they're accomplishing, or they don't feel a sense of purpose in that. I have a purpose, and when I sit here in the office, and my office is my home, I'm looking out at my pool, this beautiful garden my wife has built. Normally I have a fountain running. I turned it off for the podcast here. But it's just so amazing to be able to do all that. And when I want to, and I tend to like working later in the day. I will start late in the day, and last night I was busy until about 1 a.m, but I was just having a ball doing what I was doing, writing, and I was doing some website stuff and some design for a friend. And it's a lot of fun. The variety is incredible too. It's not the same thing day in and day out. It's not boring. Right. Every audience I have is unique and interesting. The other part that I absolutely love in my field is the places it's allowed me to go and do. I'm an absolute space nut. I followed the space program since I was a little kid. And because of what I do in speaking and as my own person, I've spoken at NASA many, many times, but they've allowed me, I've been on board all 3 of the space shuttles. They just retired.
Oh, wow.
I've got pictures of me sitting in the cockpit. I even on occasion, and NASA people wonder how I did this, my son, when he was 10 years old, I've got a picture of him sitting on board the Space Shuttle Atlantis in the commander seat. And and I've flown the simulator at the Johnson Space Center. It's now been disassembled since they're not flying the shuttle anymore. But I've flown that enough times where I could actually land it without hurting it. It's a full motion simulator. They strap you in on your back, tilt you upside, on your back, and off they go. And they do a launch and a return to launch site abort, and you have to land it. And it's a kick. So, and we go down to see launches. In fact, at the end of this month, I'm going down to see a Delta Heavy launch that they're doing for this satellite they're sending out to go study the sun. It's going to actually go into orbit around the sun at about 3 million miles from the sun. And that's launching on the 31st of July. And I'll be down there watching it from as close as any human being gets. My badge allows me to get as close as you can safely be there. And the shock wave is a kick. So some pretty cool things. And I've been able to interview people. I'm the people I've been able to interview and talk to and meet are just incredible. 4 years ago, we were invited to the Apollo 1 Memorial, where they celebrate the astronauts that were lost on January 27, 1967, Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White. And I went to that as a guest of the Air Force. That evening, somebody said, "Hey, coming to dinner?" Grissom's put on a dinner every year at the hotel. I thought I'd be in a room with 50 people. I spent 4 hours across the table from Betty Grissom, Gus Grissom's wife, and her son Mark, and a cousin named Steve. And I sat there just listening to stories. And ever since then, I've been a guest of the family at that event and done stuff for them up in Indiana, where they've had a fundraiser for the Boyhood Home. That's the other thing. And I know you do fundraising for different things. I've seen it when you've on some of the emails. And the opportunity to use what you do in your profession and choosing those organizations that you want to benefit with that, you don't have to charge them. I'm not somebody that's a consultant being, some big corporation charging my money off to some deal. I'm saying, hey, could you use some help on this? And I can give that to them.
Well, this speaking, really, I know people, like you said, so many people are afraid of it, but it just gives you so many life experiences, helping people, travel, and all these wonderful things from it. So it's worth overcoming the fear of it. No, the closest I ever got to the space program,
yep.
I took one of those fake pictures down at Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And me in some kind of spacesuit. And then I hung the picture up outside the meeting room and said, "Houston, the speaker has landed."
There you go.
So that's closest I ever got.
Pretty good line. Yeah, I like that. Well, if I can ever get you down to Orlando when I'm down there, I've the deputy commander at Cape Canaveral is actually we do stuff for him, and so he badges us in for the whole year.
Oh,
and
wow.
He's taken me places that people don't even know exist. At the Space Center, we drive the backwoods and behind the weeds and everything else, and can see the original stains on the cement from the first launch at Cape Canaveral.
I know a guy that was in the control room.
Right.
During, what was that movie they had with Tom Hanks?
Apollo 13. Yep.
Apollo 13?
Mhm.
He was in the control room. I
Right.
know the guy. Would you like to talk to him someday?
It's possible. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
You can give me the
Yeah.
information.
I
I've
will.
been in that control room. In fact, when we'd go to Johnson Space Center, it was one of the places I would go I'd speak there in the mornings 3 days in a row, and then I'd go visit people the rest of the time. And I've sat in that control room, pulled the drawers open, and looked at the old launch reports and everything, and sat at the chair where the guy you're talking about would have been sitting during that whole thing. It's an amazing place to sit there and be where all this history occurred.
All right. So we jacked them up on all the greatest stuff about
Yep.
being in business for yourself, but it's not always bright and shiny. So what's the worst thing about being in
The
business?
tough thing is you aren't dealing with a regular paycheck. I think my wife has more difficulty with that than I do. It's one of those things where it can fluctuate depending on the market. If the market does something interesting, it can get interesting. In the field of speaking, a few years ago, a lot of meetings disappeared. I was fortunate because people were still having safety meetings. But a lot of other stuff I do. I mean, the other thing, it allows you to diversify. A lot of the stuff I've learned from you, I've developed and now learned from your internet market training course. From that, I'm now designing websites.
Yeah. Did you go through the school?
I'm about halfway through it right now.
You're halfway through the school. Yeah.
It's
right.
outstanding, and it's of course I have a belief that God takes care of the details when I need them. Every time I've needed something, it's the next course I'm working on. So I can probably look at the rest of the course and tell you how the business is going to be going in the next few months, because it seems to track that way. But it's fabulous stuff, by the way. But the difficulties of it are you are the one responsible. You're the one that's going to make it happen or not happen in your business. And if you're not able to handle that, I don't have stress in my life. I tend to avoid stress. I get to airports early, and I don't let things stress me out. So I kind of always look to the positive side of things. But you do need to be aware there are times where you go, hey, there's nobody else doing this but me.
That's for sure. But see, I particularly like that.
Yeah.
But some people, that's scary, especially if they're coming out of the corporate world where they snap their fingers and somebody gets some coffee, or if they have trouble with the computer, they call IT, and so
I'm
sitting there looking
I love that stuff too. To me it's exhilarating. It's fine, and I love learning. One of the things that's fabulous. I had a young man I hired in my office from my Boy Scout troop. I was Scoutmaster, and he was one of the older kids, and I hired him to do some stuff in the office, and he taught me how to solve 90% of the problems I have. I can be working on a video editor or a sound editor on the computer here, and I go, shoot, how do I do that? And it's late at night, and there's nobody support I could call or something. So I just type into Google, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And I type out as clearly as I can what I want to accomplish, and son of a gun, there's some guy on YouTube that's
somebody's figured it out.
Yeah.
Well, I started out with Ilya in 1997. That was my first geek, and I'm still to this day using stuff that he taught me on automation and just all kinds of stuff. Tell them about the product you have.
Well, let me tell you, if I could, one of the things we talked about before we got on the call was one of the key things that I've realized is you need to find a mentor or mentors. And some of them you're going to pay for, but a lot of people, and this is one of the things I taught people in the National Speaker Association, was actually a class I taught several years at the convention, was don't just ask, how do I become successful on the internet, or how do I become successful as a speaker? But ask somebody that really knows a question, a single focused question. And I made it a habit, and I had my marketing person do this, where we would call once a week another certified speaking professional, it was before I was one, and ask them a simple focused question of how do we do this thing? And then I actually sent Diane to 3 or 4 speakers' offices where I flew her around the country to go sit with Larry Wingett's assistant. She met with him. She went up to Minneapolis to meet with Harvey McKay and his assistant. And the guy said, yeah, he says, yeah, I'll spend the morning with you. We're just going to have to pick up Harvey at the airport. And then she got to listen to his advice. And, all of that was free except for flying people around.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know something that you want to actually ask somebody, they then know you're serious and that you've done some homework ahead of time. Also, one of my rules is if somebody's written a book, read it first. Because
good idea.
There's nothing worse than somebody asking you a question you've already given the answer to, and they haven't taken the time to read your book. And it's kind of like, hey, clown, do that first. I'll help focus it for you. Tony Robbins, I had the privilege of doing magic for him back around 1997, 95, thereabouts. And I would do magic for people waiting for the big events. And as a result, I got to go to all the seminars for free. So that saved me a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had access to him privately, and it was where I developed using some of the magic to help teach. It creates a certain situation where people are looking for an answer. But the key thing there was I wasn't wasting somebody's time with ridiculous questions. I'd have a focused question, and then he'd tell me, read this book, and and stuff he read. And that's the other thing I look for is I ask mentors, what books have you read that helped you do what it is I'm trying to learn? And you read those books, you get some of the foundation of their material. That's even more powerful.
Sure is. So tell them about your product for overcoming the fear of public speaking.
What I developed a year ago, I was at a conference and a guy came up to me from Australia and said, you did a session on overcoming fear of speaking, and I used the techniques you taught me, and I haven't been afraid of speaking in front of people since then. And I looked at my associate and said, we ought to make that a product.
Yeah, right.
It's like, wait a minute, we're missing the boat here. And so we went ahead and wrote the materials for this. I did further research beyond what I had already been doing with people to make sure I was hitting everything right. We went ahead and put the course together. It's not like a regular online course because it's one of these things where I want you to sit down for the whole hour and listen and do the exercises and then be done with it. It's not the type thing you listen to 10 minutes, then turn it back on later. And we cover that in the instructions. But it just simply is they go through these 8 different steps that I take people through. And when they're done, usually when they're done with the third step, they're usually pretty much done with the fear of it. But once again, I like wiping things out. And it allows them then to enjoy speaking. Then they can get better at it or they can use it in whatever capacity they want to. So I built that over the course of the year. And then at the end, I've got a good friend who's a behavioral psychologist at Virginia Tech, sent him the script for the course. He then spent the weekend going through it and highlighting stuff. The best news was, he said, everything you're teaching people is all research-based. You're using, you're not necessarily using the psychological term behind it, but it's all valid in how people's minds work. And then we actually shot the video for it on his porch in Virginia. He's over by Blacksburg, and shot it on his porch one day with a green screen behind us and behind me. And then we've put in speaking situations I've been, or the kind of what we splice into the video. But it's fun. It's real easy to do, and they can just access it on any device, their computer or a handheld device or a tablet. And
where do they find it?
It's the website is endpublicspeakinganxiety.com.
Okay, we'll have that in the show notes, endpublicspeakinganxiety.com.
Right, and then there's also, my main site is Drebinger.com, which is Drebinger.com, and there's always a link to it on there. If you look for the fear of speaking on the little widget on the side, there'll be a link to the place. So, and it's really a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where it's simple for people to do. It's not complicated, and instead of having to struggle through it, I mean, I read Warren Buffett. There are all these other people that are top business people, and each and every one of them, most of what they write about is how they've learned to cope with it. They still don't enjoy it. It's like, wow, what a shame.
Yeah, there's so much joy out there if you could just learn to open your eyes and appreciate it. We got to take a message from the sponsor. So when we come back, we're going to ask you, what's a typical day look like for you and how you stay motivated? We'll be right back.
Today, almost 2 billion of you will go online, retrieving over 100 billion searches for information, goods, and services, and 6 million of you will view a page on the internet before this commercial is over. The world has changed, and so has the way we do business. At the Internet Marketing Training Center, you can study online at your pace to fit your schedule, and you can graduate with the skills and knowledge to compete in the global marketplace or start your own home-based business. Call us today or go online at imtcva.org because it's about time. Yours.
All right, we're back with the super duper John Drebinger. John, what's a typical day look like for you?
When I'm home and not traveling in a speaking situation, I'm home today. It's on a Monday. So I'll come out to my office and work on whatever project. I like setting up ahead of time when I know I'm going to spend a day working. I like the day before or the last time I was doing something to have in mind what I'm going to do next, so that I don't end up in the office spending 3, 4, 5 hours of doing stuff that's not significant or important. And so I will plan ahead to go do that, head out to my little at-home office I have here, and tell you how much I like flying. Inside the office, I have 2 first-class seats, actually from an airplane, sitting in here.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Now they're getting smaller nowadays. Are they shrinking in your?
Yeah, no, I know.
Office?
Yeah, no, they're the full size ones. So I'll work on a lot of times. I'll work on the website. I'll play with stuff I'm writing. I'll work on a newsletter. I publish a newsletter every week in the field of safety and communications, and then I switch.
Where can they sign up for that if they want to get that?
That's on Drebinger.com, Drebinger, and you're going to have it on your site. Sure. And that's a weekly newsletter I put out, and so I'll work on writing on that. I have requests from clients that'll want articles for their newsletters and stuff. So, and there's trade publications that I'll write for when they've got a request for something. My presentations are customized for the clients, but they're basically about 4 or 5 different presentations I do. So I don't have to work a lot of times on writing a presentation. And a lot of times I'll actually do that in the field. I was at the safety convention this last week, and on Monday I had an outline for my presentation on Wednesday that I was going to do. And by Wednesday I had rewritten the whole thing because I had gotten some ideas listening to other people. And I thought, I need to address this issue because nobody else is. And so I redid my PowerPoint slides and all that good stuff and had some, that's the other thing. We're working on creative stuff. We've made use of things from Fiverr and different places. I've got a guy that did a Clint Eastwood impersonation telling you should wear your seatbelt. And so we've got that on our site. We did a April Fool's staircase fall protection video that we actually created in-house from stuff I've learned from, you and the affiliates you've worked with. And we did a short, I think it was about 3-minute video. If we were going to redo it, I'd probably make it 1 to 1.5 minutes. But it's a safety announcement announcing that now any staircase with more than 3 stairs, you have to wear a full fall protection harness. And we let our client, they take that and they show it to people saying, hey, guess what we got to do now? And people are going like, are you kidding? And at the end it says, no, it's April Fool's, but you really do have fall protection in a staircase. It's called the handrail. Use it. So, and I think that's the other thing I love. I love having fun with stuff. So as things start happening here that's the other advantage of working with yourself is you can make the choices to change different things or go in a different direction immediately. You don't have to sell everybody else on the idea.
Right. You have to have a 2-week committee meeting.
Yeah, no kidding. So
I guess all this stuff is what helps you stay motivated, but is there any particular tricks you have that keep you motivated? For
me, one of the, and I teach this to other safety professionals, I know for a fact the work I do and what I've taught people is save lives. I've actually had people come and tell me something they did after I taught them something, and that saved somebody's life. And so I know that happens, but from the years of my working with the Boy Scouts, I always think in terms of some kid at home waiting for mom or dad to get home. And I know how important mom or dad being there for them is. And I always imagine myself, if I really want to get pumped up, I'll sit there and say, I need to do a good job today because that kid's counting on me getting the message through to the person that they're counting on getting home. Or I've got to help that safety professional become better at communicating so they get their people home safely every day. And so that's one of my strongest motivators. I love that kind of stuff. And of course, I love being, doing everything I do. So the better I get at it, the more I'm out on the road and having a good time.
There you go. So you have any parting thoughts for our screwballs out there who are wanting to have a life like yours?
Well, obviously, they've already bumped into you and your podcast. One of the things I would tell you is when somebody tells you to do something, give it a try. I remember Dennis Waitley was speaking at a Boy Scout conference once, and he said, do something with what he called open-minded skepticism. Open-minded enough to try it and skeptical enough that if it doesn't work for you, try something else. One of the things I would tell people that are listening to you, Tom, you have some of the best concepts and ideas and insights and connections to people that know what to do and how to do it. And anybody that doesn't fully utilize the stuff that you provide for them, the different webcasts and webinars and the materials you have, you're out of your mind if you're not making use of that. And that internet marketing course is absolutely fabulous. And even though as a speaker, some of it is not what I do, all the skills that are part of it allow me to be better as a speaker and serving my clients.
Yeah, a lot of the techniques are the same no matter which way you point them. So,
right.
So, yeah, what was that term? Open-minded skepticism.
Yeah, open-minded skepticism so that you're willing to try something out and see how that works.
Great advice from a great guy. So how do people reach you if they want to ask any questions or ask you about your course?
Well, the easiest way to reach me is through our website. It's endpublicspeakinganxiety.com. My email is John, John, at Drebinger, Drebinger.com. And I'm always open to talking to people and helping them out with what they need help with.
You're awesome, John. It's so great to know you. I want to thank you for coming on today. And for everybody, this was episode 32, John Drebinger. Make sure you check the show notes, check out all the offerings he has. And if you're thinking about speaking or an apprehensive, his course can get you past that and let you enjoy all the great things he's talked about. All the things you've heard me talk about are out there waiting for you. So this is episode 32 of Screw the Commute podcast. We'll see you on the next episode. Catch you later.